Good morning and welcome to Round the Globe on Aneke TV. First, the headlines. European leaders hopeful for a ceasefire in the war in Ukraine. Israeli Prime Minister says Gaza ceasefire talks now focus on release of all hostages. Cape Verde declares state of emergency after deadly floods. President Tinubu departs Abuja on a two-nation visit. Federal government bans creation of new tertiary institutions. I am Aneke. Now the news in details. European leaders appeared cautiously optimistic after holding a virtual meeting with Donald Trump a day before he meets his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Alaska to discuss ending the war in Ukraine. Trump reportedly told the Europeans that his goal for the summit was to obtain a ceasefire between Moscow and Kiev. He also agreed that any territorial issues had to be decided with Volodymyr Zelensky's involvement and that security guarantees had to be part of the deal, according to France's Emmanuel Macron. Speaking to Trump had allowed him to clarify his intentions and give the Europeans a chance to express their expectations, Macron said. Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance spoke to the leaders of the UK, France, Germany and Italy, Finland and Poland, as well as EU Chief Ursula von der Leyen and NATO Chief Mark Rutte. UK Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer will meet with Zelensky in London on Thursday morning. Now we move to North Korea. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's sister has rebutted South Korea's claims that Pyongyang removed some of its propaganda blasting loudspeakers along the border. Kim Yo-jong said in a statement that North Korea has never removed the speakers and are not willing to remove them. South Korea's military said earlier this week that North Korea had removed some of its loudspeakers along the border days after South Korea dismantled some of its own. Now we move over to Gaza. Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that ceasefire efforts in Gaza are now focused on a comprehensive deal that would release the remaining hostages all at once rather than in phases. Mr. Netanyahu's latest comment on the ceasefire in Gaza comes amid the news of a plan by Israel to possibly resettle Palestinians from Gaza to South Sudan, and as global criticism mounts over Gaza's hunger crisis. Israel has threatened to widen its military offensive against Hamas to the areas of Gaza that it does not yet control and where most of the territory's 2 million residents have sought refuge. Those plans have sparked international condemnation and criticism within Israel and could be intended to raise pressure on Hamas to reach a ceasefire. In the meantime, more than 100 organizations have signed a joint letter calling on Israel to stop the weaponization of aid into Gaza as starvation deepens. Humanitarian groups, including Oxfam and Medicine Sans MSF, say they are increasingly being told they are not authorized to deliver aid unless they comply with the stricter Israeli regulations. The letter says groups risk being banned if they delegitimize the state of Israel or do not provide detailed information about Palestinian staff. Israel denies there are restrictions on aid and says the rules introduced in March ensure relief work is carried out in line with Israel's national interests. Now to some stories in Africa. Cape Verde has declared a state of emergency on the islands of São Vicente and São Antão after deadly floods which killed at least 9 people and forced 1,500 from their homes. The state of emergency activates crisis funds and urgent infrastructure repairs in the Atlantic Ocean islands of the west coast of Africa. The flash floods were triggered by Tropical Storm Erin, leading to 193 millimeters of rain in just 5 hours, far above São Vicente's annual average. The country's Deputy Prime Minister Olavo told the BBC the floods were catastrophic. Rescue teams were desperately searching for missing people, while roads, homes and vehicles have been severely damaged. We're still in Africa. French President Emmanuel Macron has acknowledged the violence committed by his country's forces in Cameroon during and after the Central African nation's struggle for independence. It followed a joint report by Cameroonian and French historians examining France's suppression of independence movements from 1945 to 1971. In a letter to Cameroon's president, Paul Biya, Mr. Macron said the report made clear a war had taken place in Cameroon during which the colonial authorities and the French army exercised repressive violence of several kinds in certain regions of the country. However, Mr. Macron fell short of offering a clear apology for the atrocities committed by French troops in its former colony, which gained independence in 1960. Now to some stories from Nigeria. President Bola Tinubu will depart Abuja today for official visits to Japan and Brazil, with a brief stopover in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Presidential spokesperson Mr. Bayo Nanuga announced this in a statement issued in Abuja. In Japan, the president would participate in the ninth Tokyo International Conference on African Development scheduled to hold in Yokohama from August 20 to 22. The conference would focus on economic transformation, private investment, and institutional development across the continent. It also aimed to promote a resilient and sustainable African society grounded in peace, stability, and human security. During the summit, Onanuga said President Tinubu would attend plenary sessions and hold bilateral meetings with world leaders as well as Japanese business executives. In education, the federal government has imposed a 7-year moratorium on the establishment of new federal universities, polytechnics, and colleges of education, citing the proliferation of underutilized institutions, overstretched resources, and a drop in academic quality. The decision was approved at Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by President Bola Tinubu at the Presidential Villa Abuja, following a presentation by the Minister of Education, Dr. Tunji Alausa. FEC, however, approved 9 new universities despite the freeze. Briefing State House correspondents after the meeting, the minister said the challenge in Nigeria's tertiary education system was no longer access to but inefficient duplication, poor infrastructure, inadequate staffing, and dwindling enrollment in many existing institutions. Also, the Federal Executive Council FEC has approved major funding to upgrade power infrastructure across the country. This is in a bid to boost electricity supply and support national industrial growth. The Minister of Power, Adebayo Adelabu, announced this after a FEC meeting chaired by President Bola Tinubu at the Presidential Villa Abuja. He said 4 key proposals were approved, marking a new phase in the country's ongoing power sector transformation agenda. Adelabu said that the first approved proposal involves the resumption of compensation payments for right-of-way access for key industrial and transmission projects. In electioneering, the Court of Appeal has constituted an election petitions tribunal for the National and State House of Assembly I'll take that paragraph again. The Court of Appeal has constituted an election petitions tribunal for the National and State House of Assembly by-elections in Anambra. Mr. Ibrahim Usman, the Secretary of the Election Tribunal in Anambra, announced this in a statement in Awka. Usman said the tribunal would hear and determine petitions which may arise from the conduct of senatorial and House of Assembly by-elections. The Independent National Electoral Commission, Aneke, is conducting by-elections for Anambra South Senatorial District and Onitsha 1 state constituency on August 16. In the meantime, the House of Representatives has commenced investigation into the 1.6 trillion naira Nigeria Community Action for Resilience and Economic Stimulus (NGCAS) social intervention program of the federal government. The chairman, House Committee on NGCAS, representing Rep. Abubakar Kusada, made this known while briefing newsmen in Abuja. He said that the investigation had become imminent since the masses were allegedly not feeling the impact of the social net despite the federal government fulfilling its funding obligation. The lawmaker said that government had also provided the guidelines and the operational arrangements for the effective implementation of the program. A total of $696 million, which is an equivalent of 1.6 trillion naira, has been released as social intervention, safety nets, and palliatives to Nigerians in the 36 states and the FCT through the various delivery platforms. Also, the Federal Ministry of Livestock Development has inaugurated a milk collection center with a 2,000-litre daily capacity at the Sawi Grazing Reserve in Adamami community of Shira local government area of Bauchi State. Speaking during the inauguration, the ministry's Director of Livestock Development, Mr. Tagui James, explained that the facility was sited at the Sawi Grazing Reserve because of the significant milk deposits that could be harnessed daily. Mr. James stated that the rehabilitation of the milk collection center is part of the federal government's renewed drive to meet the country's demand for dairy products to boost local milk production and reduce Nigeria's dependency on dairy imports. He called on state governments to support federal government efforts by implementing livestock-related policies and programs to achieve these objectives. Now we move over to the crime scene. The High Court of Ebonyi State, sitting at the Afikpo Judicial Division holding at Afikpo, presided over by Justice Nicholas Ngudi, has sentenced 4 persons to 7 years imprisonment following a 3-count charge of conspiracy, vandalism and stealing. The convicts Ikechukwu Ese, Ikedinachi Uchi, Ukbai Godwin and Uchenna Kalu were arrested for attacking a 7.5 MVA injection substation belonging to the Enugu Electricity Distribution Company, EEDC, located at Enugu Education Board Road, Afikpo in Afikpo North, local government area of Ebonyi State. This development was made known in a press statement by the group head corporate communications, Mr. Emeka Eze. We move to Zamfara State. The Zamfara State Governor, Mr. Daud Lawal, has visited some communities affected by recent banditry activities in the state and solicited constant prayers from the community members. According to reports, various communities in the state have suffered from recent bandit attacks and kidnapping activities. Sympathizing with the victims in the Banga community, Mr. Lawal reassured them of his administration's commitment to addressing the lingering security challenges affecting communities in the state. Mr. Lawal assured all of his administration's readiness to collaborate with the security agencies and all other stakeholders to find lasting solutions to the challenges in the state. Now we move over to Delta State. The Senior Special Assistant on Media to the Delta State's Governor, Mr. Osai's success, has offered a paid job and an all-expense-paid trip to Comfort Emanton, the Ibom air passenger recently released from Kirikiri prison. In an Instagram post, Mr. Osai announced that a monthly salary of 500,000 naira had been secured for Emanton in Delta State. The package also includes flight tickets, accommodation in a 5-star hotel, a guided tour and a ticket to the Delta Social Media Summit scheduled for 28th of this month in Asaba. Mr. Osai added that the trip was to help her relax after her release, saying, Okay, and then we move over to the business news. A cyber attack on the Information Communication Technology ICT platform of the Nigeria Customs Service (NCS) has caused significant disruptions to cargo clearance operations at ports across the country. Confirming the development, NCS spokesman Mr. Maiwada Abdullahi told newsmen that the attack occurred some time ago, adding, however, that the system has been restored. He said NCS has strengthened its systems to ensure that cyber criminals will find it much more difficult to penetrate in the future. Regarding potential compensation, Mr. Abdullahi said that discussions are ongoing with several stakeholders on the matter and hinted at possible relief measures for importers whose goods were delayed during the system outage. Also on business, Nigeria's telecom regulator has called for stronger public cooperation in safeguarding telecommunications infrastructure, warning that service disruptions could undermine the economy and national security. The Nigerian Communications Commission made this call in a statement after brokering a deal to avert a strike by the Natural Oil and Gas Suppliers Association of Nigeria. The industrial action planned over fuel supply issues last week would have cut off diesel deliveries to thousands of telecom sites, many of which rely on generators to stay online and amid Nigeria's unreliable power grid. The intervention, led by the Office of the National Security Advisor in partnership with the NCC, highlighted just how fragile the country's connectivity is. NCC Chief Executive Officer Mr. Aminu Maida said the agency will continue to enforce technical standards and work closely with security agencies, operators, and the public to safeguard these assets. He also urged Nigerians to see the infrastructure as a shared national asset that powers everything from business transactions to healthcare and education. In the meantime, the equity market witnessed a downturn yesterday as performance indices declined by 0.13%. This followed two consecutive days of bullish trading earlier in the week. The negative trend was driven by sell-offs in Thomas White Nigeria, UPDC, Real Estate Investment Trust, Legend Internet PLC, Beja Paint, and 15 other stocks. The market capitalization shed 121 billion naira, or 0.13%, to close at 92.284 trillion naira, compared with 92.405 trillion naira at the previous session's opening. The all-share index also fell by 0.13%, or 191.09 points, closing at 145,800 and against the 146,055 recorded on Tuesday. However, the market breathed remained positive with 53 gainers and 19 losers. Now we move to sports. The Kaduna State government has begun the long-awaited full-scale reconstruction of the Ahmadu Bello Stadium in Kaduna, promising to transform the dilapidated 61-year facility into a world-class sports complex capable of hosting both continental and intercontinental tournaments. The move followed the formal transfer of ownership of the stadium from the federal government to the state after years of agitation by successive administrations in Kaduna. Speaking during an inspection tour of the facility, the Commissioner of Information designate Ahmed Mayaki lamented the current state of the once proud arena, which has produced some of Nigeria's brightest football stars but has now fallen far beyond modern sporting infrastructure standards. Also in sport, Nigeria's striker Victor Osimhen has returned to full training with Galatasaray as he hopes to make his much-awaited second debut against Faith Karagumok SK tomorrow. Osimhen rejoined the club permanently in a high-profile 75 billion euros deal from Napoli after enjoying a successful loan spell at the club last season. We move to entertainment. Gospel singer Mercy Chinwo and her husband, Pastor Blessed Uzochikwa, are celebrating their third wedding anniversary while expecting their second child. Chinwo shared anniversary photographs with her husband on social media, exuding what she described as love, peace, and purpose. Also, the ongoing Big Brother Nigeria season with Niku told newsmen at the family residence in Lokoja that their father had been traumatized by Ayobami's brutal killing. And that's all on around the globe here on Aneke Point. European leaders cautiously optimistic after holding a virtual meeting with Donald Trump a day before he meets his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin in Alaska to discuss ending the war in Ukraine. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that ceasefire efforts in Gaza are now focused on a comprehensive deal that will release the remaining hostages all at once. President Bola Tinubu will depart Abuja today. 0437110. You can send us a message across all social media platforms: Facebook, YouTube, X, and Instagram, all at
We'll tell your stories. We amplify your voice and your vision. With every screen we light up, we connect, inform, and empower. It's more than a television. Connect, inform, and empower. It's more than a television.
It is more than the body. It's more than the body. It's a soul speaking to soul. Fire woven with trust.